Thank you so much, Tosin. 2 years ago, it was February 8th. We had TLI, 2001 world champion. Darren Lacroix was giving his workshop. After the workshop, I got a chance to talk to him. I said, this is a time of international speech contest. I've not done any speech. I've not written anything. What should I do? One thing he said would change my trajectory. He said, just go for more stage time, stage time, stage time. At that moment, I did not understand what he meant. But next day, I went to work. It was Sunday morning. I went to work, I wrote my script, and I got my first speaking slot on Tuesday to try out that speech. As I gave my speech, there was this one evaluator. She gave me this one feedback. She said, "You need to start your speech with a bang, make that noise." So I started adding this one nugget in my speech. Then I gave that speech again at another club. Song said, "You need to start in the middle of your action in the speech." And I gave that speech over 15 times. I had more than 15 evaluators, and they helped me to get better, better, better. And that speech was coming to life after a month. It was all because of the evaluations, evaluations, evaluations. So today, I'm going to share the things I've learned from various people. I'm not an expert, but I've just done over 150 evaluations. So I'm going to share some things. This is going to be an interactive session, so ask me any questions you may have. Let's get it started. Let me share my slides. Hope you can see my slides. Give me 1 second. Let me go full screen. If you can, take your cursor in the middle so that you can see half of me in one and half of my slides in the other side. So one thing I always try to do is I want to have, not only I want to motivate the speaker, but I also want to evaluate with empathy because I'll come back to it. I had to learn this technique because initially I was afraid of sharing the evaluation. So let's get it started. What is the agenda for today? First, we'll start with why do we need to evaluate? Then we'll deep dive into radical candor compass. This concept is originated by Kim Scott, who wrote the book Radical Candor. And right now she changed the terminology. She calls it as compassionate candor. What to evaluate? We'll go into the details of what we should evaluate. And then we'll deep dive into the magic of I statements. Remember not to use you. Use I saw, I felt, I heard. What is the system and structure we need to follow? Then we'll go into what is an ideal feedback. This I learned from Ryan Avery, who is a 2012 world champion, I think. Then we'll talk about superlatives and rambling. I'll give you a story about both superlatives and ramblings. And then I'll share how should we practice our evaluations. And questions. This is going to be an interactive session, so ask me any questions at any moment. It'll make it a lot of fun if you ask me more questions. My first question for you, Bharat, why should we evaluate? You're a new Toastmaster, so that's why I'm going to ask you first.
I think there's two reasons why I feel it's valuable. One is it helps you articulate and streamline the way you talk about what others are presenting. And I think it's also valuable to the people who are actually up there presenting to hear feedback, live feedback, maybe unfiltered in some cases. So I feel like there's two reasons, Abhijit.
Very true, very true. Sarah, you want to add something to that?
What was the question again?
Why do we need to evaluate?
Like, what was his name? Whoever opened the meeting, he said it's really important because this is how we encourage people to stick around in Toastmasters. Is how people get value.
Yes.
And feel like they can grow.
Definitely. It adds value, people can grow. Dylan, anything you want to add on this?
I would just say it's to learn from the good and to grow from the bad.
Very, very true. If you are evaluating someone, we can always learn from them. Sometimes we can even steal them because they are doing something really fascinating, which we have never done before or we don't know. So we can always learn from it. So here are the three takeaways. Are a lot of things I'm going to share, but these are the three main takeaways I want you to remember. One is radical candor. I'll show you the quadrant you should be in when you are doing an evaluation. The second is always use the I statements. I saw, I felt, I heard. I'll also share other I statements too. And finally, remember, you have to give that specific feedback with example. If you don't have that specific example, then the speaker does not know what exactly you are talking about. Let's get it started. Let's talk about radical candor. As I told to you before, I learned this from my mentor first, who is Dennis Dawson, but Kim Scott wrote this book, Radical Candor. What is radical candor? So radical candor is just a compass. You have a y-axis. On the top side, you care personally about the speaker. On the bottom side, you really don't care about the speaker. And then you also have the x-axis. On one side, you stay silent. And on the other side, you really deeply, you give very challenging feedback, direct challenging feedback. So we'll go through each and every quadrant. Where should our feedback lie? The first quadrant, manipulative insincerity. This quadrant, the evaluator remains silent and even doesn't care about the speaker. I've not seen this much of it in Toastmasters. Let's go to the next quadrant. I want to share a story. It was June of 2020. There was this speaker giving a level 5 speech. Level 5 speech, the timing was 8 to 10 minutes. And it was a recap, reflection on the path. One thing I immediately noticed, the speaker was not prepared. And his speech length was smaller. It was only 6 minutes. So I knew he was not meeting the objectives of the speech, as well as he was not prepared. But at that moment, I was afraid to let him know. I cared about him, so I stayed silent. And this is the second worst quadrant to be in. I had to work on myself to move away from ruinous empathy. Obnoxious aggression. I was a new Toastmaster in 2020. And I went to this advanced club, really advanced club. There are 15 people who are giving me an evaluation for my speech, back to back to back to back. And it was so direct that it was too much for me. So remember, be careful with obnoxious aggression. Actually, this is still the second best quadrant because at least you are giving some value to the speaker. And radical candor. In this quadrant, you really care about the person, but at the same time, you give a challenging feedback in an empathetic way. Like if I had to give the feedback to my friend who gave a level 5 speech, I would have said, if you had well prepared the speech, maybe you would not have had these many pauses. So I'm calling him on it that he's not prepared. And also telling him if he prepares his speech well, he will not have that many pauses. So this is the quadrant we need to be in, radical candor or the compassionate candor, where we deeply care about the person, but at the same time, we give them a challenging feedback in an empathetic way. If you look at this graph, when you are in obnoxious aggression, there is maybe a little change. In ruinous empathy, there is no change. But in radical candor, you can see a profound amount of change as well as the growth. Any questions so far?
Uh, Abhijit, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So how do you fit them into? When do you choose where it? How do you decide where to fit them into any part of the place?
Yes. So you always should be in the radical candor compass. You always care personally and give them challenging feedback in an empathetic way. Radical candor is the only quadrant you should be in.
Yeah. My question is more like, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
you're in a situation where you need to evaluate, but your job is to evaluate. Maybe you wanted to take personally and give the feedback out of the room, or you wanted to give or say in front of everyone, saying that, okay, you haven't prepared well or something like that. How do you do that?
So you can give it directly, but you can do it in a compassionate way. Like I did not say, like when I told you, right? I did not tell that, oh, you were not prepared. But I told him, okay, if you had prepared well, you would not have enough pauses. So I'm calling him on it that he's not prepared. I'm also telling him if he is preparing, then he will lose those pauses.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pause after this. Say sometimes I don't know if the other person might have prepared very well, but may not be able to deliver on the spot.
Yes.
So I'm not sure whether do we really need to call out on the specific, saying that you didn't do this because of so and so. Is that expected, or is it okay?
So then it comes into the comfort of the person.
Right.
You need to understand, like suppose if it's a new speaker, you know that it takes them time to get more comfortable. So you tell them, don't worry about it. The more speeches you give, the more comfortable you will become.
Got it. Yeah, that helps. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. If there are no other questions, we'll move on. So this is what we evaluate. If you don't like the person, you don't evaluate that person. The things only you evaluate are the speech content, the speech delivery, and the impact of the speech. Remember, we only evaluate the content of the speech, the delivery of the speech, and the impact of the speech. If you don't like the person, you keep it aside. We'll go through the 12 categories of what we can evaluate. These are just examples. Okay, there are many categories. The one thing I would mention, every evaluation has an evaluation form. I want you to always read that evaluation form before giving out an evaluation. And it's the speaker's job to make sure the evaluation form is given to the evaluator at least a couple of days before their speech, because it gives the time for the evaluator to prepare for the evaluation. And I will also share the link where all the evaluation forms are. So here are some of the 12 categories we can evaluate. Vocal variety. There are 5 secrets of famous speakers. And one of the secrets says words are mere 7%. Vocal variety is 38%. So how they are going to evaluate the vocal variety? Today, our first speaker the objective of the speech is introduction to vocal variety and body language. So we will see this evaluation is a little bit different. You talk about the pace, you talk about the rate, you talk about the volume, you talk about the enunciation. So there are a lot of things involved in vocal variety. So we'll go deep into that when we do the evaluation. Gestures. As I said, words are merely 7%. Vocal variety is 38%, or the tone of voice is 38%. And 55% is gestures. I was amazed by this new Toastmaster Mike in my club. The way he uses his body is phenomenal. Immediately it's like, oh my goodness. His gestures are making a difference in his speech. So gestures are very important. Like as I told you, our first speech is going to be introduction to vocal variety and body language. We'll be able to understand how we evaluate the body language as well as the tone of voice. One thing I want to tell you, in gestures, they should be sincere. Once you start practicing your speech, your body will start moving automatically. You use those gestures. Role play. What happens is when you have a speech and if you have a dialogue, and if you use a dialogue, it really can communicate a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And dialogue can also add a lot of vocal variety. So this is one of the parameters. You can evaluate the speech, evaluate the speaker on the role play. Audience awareness. Does the speaker have the audience awareness? Like one time I was giving a workshop and I was too intense. I realized it, but at that moment I did not know what to do. I was lacking that audience awareness in that moment. So we need to have that good audience awareness, what is happening. So you can evaluate the speaker based on the audience awareness. Props. Props can add to a speech. So if a speaker is using a props in their speech, you can evaluate based upon that. If those props really add something to the speech, or maybe someone is using way too many props. So you can share that information in the evaluation. Clarity. When they're giving a speech, are you able to follow them? Because sometimes when someone is giving a speech, I'm not able to follow them. And then if I can share that information with them, that, oh, I lost you in this particular moment, that can add value to the speaker. Pauses. We had a speaker yesterday, Shreya. She gave a speech and she did not have any pauses. Immediately the evaluator pointed it out. Oh, you did not have many pauses. And same thing happened to me. I was giving a Pecha Kucha type presentation. My presentation had 20 slides and each slide had 20 seconds. But I had a lot of content for that 20 seconds. So I did not have many pauses. And immediately my evaluator pointed it out. You better not have that much content for each slide. Have you heard of this technique, book ending? This is called as book ending or first line to last line. If a speaker is able to connect the first line to the last line of the speech, that really makes a complete circle. It really adds to the speech. I remember I started my speech with a phone call. Hey, Raj, let's go to the bank. And then when I ended it, I said, if you follow this technique, maybe you will also end up getting $5,000 from the bank. So I kind of made a complete circle in that speech. This is a very good technique to use. So if a speaker is using, you can point that out. It's like, oh, first line and last line. Always try to write down the first line and the last line of the speaker. And one thing I will also suggest to the speaker, never start your speech saying, good morning, Toastmasters, fellow Toastmaster. Don't start that because your first line is so important. Preparation. If the speaker is prepared, you can immediately tell that speaker, because of your preparation, your speech stood out. Like Jamal gave a speech last week, and she has prepared that speech for over 100 times. And now that speech is alive. You can immediately say, oh my goodness, her preparation shows. Content. Content is like when you are giving the international speech, it's like 55% of the points. How is the content? Does it connect with you? You can share that information with the speaker when you are giving that evaluation. Comfort. Sometimes when there are new speakers, like when I was in my starting journey, like 2 years ago, I was not that comfortable. I was like looking at just one spot. My eyes were big. So the evaluator started pointing it out. Hey, be careful with your eyes. Just keep on practicing. so that you become more comfortable, so that your eyes don't become so big that it kind of becomes uncomfortable for the audience. Call to action. A speech can have a call to action. If there is a call to action which makes sense, you can share that in your evaluation. It's like, oh, that call to action was adding value to the speech. So these are the categories which we can evaluate. There are many, many categories. I'm just giving you a small glimpse of some of the things which we can evaluate. Any questions regarding this? Bharat?
One question, Vijit, from
Yes.
mine. Are any of these criteria weighted more than the others, or are all these sort of equally important as far as evaluation is concerned?
So what happens is when when a speaker is giving a speech, some things will pop out for you. You try to use that. When I go to the next things, I'll show you. You don't use all the things. You just look for things which pop out the most. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The magic
Can I ask about
sure, please.
contest?
Yes, please.
I noticed in a contest, most evaluators will comment on the same points.
Yes.
Is it a good strategy to go out of your way to not pick something that you think is so obvious that most of the evaluators will also talk on that?
I totally agree with that. When you are in a contest, you don't want to pick the same things which other people are saying. You want to pick up something that is different, but also make sure you have the suggestions for it, or why. Add your why. When you add your why this was good, that makes the difference. Okay. And if you're giving them a recommendation, tell them how it can be done better. Always share with them how it can be done better. That can add value to your evaluation. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I was reading this book, Autobiography of the Yogi, and there was this one sentence which I would not forget. And that really applies when we are doing an evaluation. That sentence was, observation, not judgment, is the highest form of human intelligence. Observation, not judgment, is the highest form of human intelligence. When we are doing an evaluation, we are only sharing what we observe. So we try to use that language. That language is, I saw, I felt, I heard. Always remember, use the I statements. When you say I felt, I heard, I saw, it says that you are sharing the observation. There are many more I statements. I'll deep dive into them. So the first one is the simple observations. Like I said, I saw, I felt, I heard. But if you want to reinforce something really positive that the speaker has done, you can say, oh, I really liked the usage of props. I really enjoyed your plot. I loved the use of metaphor in your speech. So this is reinforcing the positive impact. Something was detracting about the speech. You can even say, oh, I was confused by your plot. Or I did not understand what happened with this character, or what happened in this particular situation. You can even say, oh, I dislike the usage of too many props in your speeches. If there is something you want to know more about it, you can ask, hey, isn't that like when I was giving a speech, what is your defining moment? People ask me, when your tire exploded, we wanted to know what happened in that particular moment. So I had to really elaborate that section. So these are the different I statements you can use. I'll be giving you these slides so you don't have to worry about taking notes. So here is a system of taking notes. The first thing I would say, I learned this from Renee Yao. What she said that whenever a speaker is giving the speech, write the notes in tweetable form. And I will add one more sentence to that is try to write your notes in 6 words, not very long amount of notes. So try to write it down because sometimes you have to say that precise thing what the speaker said. But here are some of the abbreviations you can use. I'll go through the 4 abbreviations. You can use the plus sign, something the speaker did effectively. You can use the dash signs, something the speaker could do to make their speech more effective. If something was very inspiring, you can use the star sign. And if something you did not understand, use the question mark. So you can use these symbols to take notes when you are doing the evaluation. So we'll now go into the structure of this evaluation. Before going into the structure, any questions so far?
I have a question about taking notes.
Yes.
So you said 6 words.
Yeah, right. Small as possible.
So when a person is talking, not the entire sentence, but just
Yes.
a little bit,
Yes.
so that we can use that as an example, right?
Yep. Because remember what happens is if you try to write longer sentences, you lose the next sentence what the speaker says, and it's like, ooh, you know. So you want to listen to what the speaker is saying. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. An evaluation, remember, is a speech. It has 3 parts: introduction, body, and summary. Here, I just want to talk about the introduction. And this is very, very important. When someone is giving an evaluation to me, I know if the evaluator is able to connect with me. It's very important the evaluator connects with the speaker. What do I mean by that? In the introduction, always share how the speech impacted you within 2 sentences, 15 to 20 seconds only. I'll give you an example. I was evaluating a speech at San Jose Toastmaster. David gave his speech, and he said in his speech that he was getting so cold in the sleeping bag that he knew he could not sleep that night in the tent. He had to get back to the car. When I was started to give the evaluation, the first thing I said, David, I'm also a wimp when it comes to cold. I would have done the same thing. Rather than camping, I would have gotten back to my car. So I made that connection with him immediately. So here you kind of share how the speech affected you or what resonates with you. You want to make that connection. So that comes in the introduction of the speech. We'll go to the we'll have the body of the speech and the summary. So here is the body of the speech. Always share in the introduction how the speech affected you or impacted you within 1 to 2 sentences, only 15 to 20 seconds. Remember, our evaluation is only for 3 minutes and a grace period of 30 seconds. So you don't have too many things to tell. In the body, you talk about 2 things the speaker did effectively. See the language I'm using. I never use the language of improvement. Okay. 2 things the speaker did effectively, 2 things the speaker could do to make their speech more effective. And then I write the best thing about the speech. So that comes in my body of my speech. In the summary, it's always good to summarize. And when you're in an evaluation contest, there are 15 points for summation. So this is the overall structure of an evaluation. Any questions regarding the structure? So summary, remember always end on a positive note. Now, when I start summarizing my evaluation, I talk about the things the speaker can do to make their speech more effective first, followed by the things the speaker did effectively and the best thing about the speech. Here, if you see, I'm doing a sandwich method and also I'm ending on a positive note because my goal is to really motivate the speaker to take that next step. I want to help them to take that next step so that they become a better speaker. Our goal is to motivate the speaker. One
I
thing
have a
I want,
question.
yes, go ahead.
So in the body, you say what's two things effectively, two things more effective, and then the best thing. And when you recap, you pretty much say even the best thing as well at the end.
Yes. But in very 1 or 2 words, not too long. Okay.
Okay.
And now, okay, any other questions? One thing I want to add is if there is something I really liked about the speech, I will end up telling the speaker I'm going to emulate this. I'm really reinforcing them because I learned something and I'm going to emulate that. I will let them know that. Okay. Feedback. What is a feedback? An opinion is something which does not have a why attached to it. But the ideal of feedback is something which has a why attached to it. Make sure if you tell them that your vocal variety in this particular section was good, add the reason why. If you don't have a why, then it's just an opinion. It does not help the speaker. And the ideal feedback is something which has a why attached to it and with that specific example. That's why we need to write those tweetable size notes to give them that specific feedback. Any questions regarding this? This is, I didn't know about this. Ryan Avery, I learned from Ryan Avery. Superlatives. I have this mentor, his name is Solar Sir. Okay. He was giving a speech on how to do an evaluations. The one thing which he said got imprinted on my brain. He said, when people use superlatives like amazing, fantastic, they show the laziness of the usage of English language. They show the laziness of the usage of English language. So try to avoid using superlatives. I had this friend, Renee. I was helping her out in evaluations. And one day, we both were at Toast-It Now. And she was giving an evaluation. I was counting how many times she said amazing, 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 amazing. Total 8 times. And when I was giving a workshop, I called upon it. Oh, I have this friend. When she gives an evaluation, she says amazing 8 times. She got very conscious about it and then she stopped. But remember, try to avoid superlatives. It does not give any information to the speaker. Rambling. Remember, you only have 3 minutes to give an evaluation with a 30-second grace period. I have this friend, Dhruva. I was at a contest at his club. He was giving me an evaluation. He had very precise points. But during one point, he took 3 to 4 sentences to say the same point. And because of that, in the contest, he was not able to summarize it. And only because of that, he lost that evaluation contest. So if you can, try to avoid rambling. Be very specific. No need to explain it too many times. Practice. How do you practice an evaluation? When Renee was working on the finals, we got together. We went to YouTube, and in YouTube, there are 28 semi-final speeches. We started practicing. We'll watch the speech. Renee will have 5 minutes to write an evaluation after the speech, and then she'll give an evaluation, and then I'll give feedback. So we did that over 16 times. When you practice that much, then your evaluations really change. And when Renee gave the evaluation in the final, her evaluation was better than anyone that day. It's all because of the practice, practice, practice. And when you're in the club, how do you practice? I remember when I started my Toastmasters journey in 2019, there was a period of 5 months. I always signed myself as evaluator, because when I started it out, I could not evaluate. I could only speak for 1 minute, 35 seconds, and I would stop. I wanted to work on my evaluation, so I just signed up every time I got a chance. Here are the 3 main takeaways I want you to remember. The first thing is, always remember, we need to be in the compassionate candor quadrant, where we give a challenging feedback in an empathetic way, and at the same time, we care deeply about the person. Always use the I statements. I saw, I felt, I heard. And remember, ideal feedback is something which has a specific example and a why attached to it. Questions. Before going to the questions, let me see if I want to show you one slide which I actually had it, but I think I removed it at the last moment. Okay. So remember, if a speaker is giving an evaluation, it's the job of the speaker to send out the evaluation form. This link has all the evaluation forms. When I send you this evaluation, this slide deck, you will have this link. Remember to understand what the objectives of the speech are. And also check with the speaker, is there something they want you to look at? Ensure you have the right evaluation form. And once you are done with evaluating, write down your written evaluation and send it to the speaker. Jamal, does this make sense for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
And I want to show one more slide. Give me 1 second. I had a contest. Okay, so this is the contest. So when you're doing an evaluation in the contest, your analytical is 40%. Okay, what things stood out? What things were effective in this speech? That is 40 points. Recommendations is 30 points. What are those specific recommendations? Okay, then technique. Are you motivational in your speech? Okay, are you sensitive? Are you sympathetic? That is 15%. And summation. Are you concise in your summation? Are you encouraging? It is 15%. So this is the judging ballot for the evaluations. And please, I would like you to read this judging criteria. If you want this form, I will send it to you. It is available online also. I'm going to stop sharing and we can go through the questions.
For
Wonderful.
timing, we have 3 minutes. How do you split your time?
Yep. So what I do is I give how the speech affected me for 15 to 20 seconds. Okay. Then I use 1 minute, 15 seconds to point out what things were effective in the speech. And then I'll try to use 1 minute to give out the specific recommendations. By the yellow light, as soon as the yellow light turns, I will start summarizing my evaluation. So once the yellow light goes, try to start thinking about summarizing your evaluation.
One follow-up to that, Abhijit,
Yes.
is does it need to be two things, or can it be, let's say, one thing that you'd like to like go a little bit deeper on, or does it need to be two each time?
It means you can just go deeper into one also. Like when I was at a contest in Vishal's in District 55, the person had just 3 things. One thing I did well, one thing I could do to make my speech effective, and the best thing about the speech. He went into details about that, and I really enjoyed his evaluation. So you can do that too. Okay. But remember one thing, no regurgitation of the speech. I've seen many evaluators, they would regurgitate the speech the speaker has given. It's like, it's completely, it doesn't add any value to the speaker. Okay. Any other questions?
Let's say I'm doing a very specific evaluation for a specific speech. Let's say just vocal variety, and
Yes.
there's a whole lot of detail in the evaluation form. So in that situation, I wouldn't do a general one like I would do for a contest, right? It's completely okay for me not to even mention the message or anything other than the vocal variety.
Yes, very, very true. Like a couple of weeks ago, we had the same project which you are doing. It was body language and vocal variety. These were the only 2 things the evaluator was supposed to look at. They did not look at the general things. And when the lady gave an evaluation, she gave a general evaluation. That was a kind of a disservice to the speaker because they wanted to know about their vocal variety and gestures. So you need to spend that time on that. I think we are, if there are no further questions, we are ready for our first speaker. Laurie, are you ready?
I am ready.
Yes, perfect. Laurie, give me 1 second. Let me spotlight you.
Can you please spotlight the timer for me as well?
Sure, I will do that. Okay, give me, I'll spotlight the timer after 5 minutes, okay?
Can I just clarify?
Yes, please.
I received the form, and on the form it says that Laurie has selected, because it's either vocal variety or body language. It's not both.
Okay.
And Laurie's chosen vocal variety. Can I just confirm that, so?
Laurie, do you want us to evaluate your vocal variety or both?
Both, please.
Both, please.
But the form doesn't have any body language parts in it at all.
I know, I saw that, yeah.
And it says vocal variety only was selected.
Yeah.
Because it's either or, it says.
What we can do is we can just do vocal variety because vocal variety is a harder one. So let's do all vocal variety. Laurie Hypolite, blossoming, Laurie.
Consider the ways of the ant. Sage advice given to us by King Solomon in the Bible. Today, I want to add a little twist to that advice given by King Solomon by considering the flowers blossoming. In considering this, I would do this in 2 parts. 1, I would look at some sage advice that we can get from the flower. And 2, I would look at how they can apply to our lives as Toastmasters. There are 3 things I want to take away from the flower as it blossoms. 1, before a flower blossoms, there is a layer of protection called a bud. This bud is covered by a sepal. While the flower is in this stage, the flower is growing and developing. 1. Secondly, while the flower is in this stage, we know that there's great potential. How does this apply to our lives as Toastmasters? This workshop this morning is an excellent example. As Toastmasters, especially for young Toastmasters, we should learn. We should develop. We should attend workshops that will help us with the skills that are needed to become the best that we can be. Look at Toastmaster Dylan. This morning he's here because he's interested in learning about evaluations. Secondly, potential. When you become a new Toastmaster, it is because you want to develop something and persons are seeing potential in you. But before they can see that potential, you need to go out. Travel. Right now, COVID has afforded us such a unique opportunity where persons can sit in the comfort of their own home and go all the way to India, as I am doing today from the Caribbean. Leave Africa and come down to India. When you do that, you are learning, you are observing, you can relax in the meeting because it is not your club meeting. You can relax, observe, learn, listen to the evaluations that are given, and use it to your advantage. After you would have done all of that, just as the bird, pressure develops from within, and you start wanting to do, taking roles in your club meeting. And that will afford you the opportunity to blossom and bloom. Second thing, when the flower is ready, it starts blooming. When you see a flower, some of your impressions, oh my Lord, it smells so good. And these are some of the things you can learn as a Toastmaster. When you take that time to develop, at some point you're going to blossom and bloom. Persons are going to start seeing what is in you. Your characteristics are going to start showing themselves. Persons are going to find opportunities for you, just as when this flower opens up. The bees come. They take the pollen and they go, helping to develop someone else. The same thing happens to you as a Toastmaster. You start to blossom, you start to bloom. Persons are seeing your potential. They know what to expect of you. They know that you are a reliable person. If they call on you today to do an evaluation, you're going to prepare for that evaluation and deliver to the best of your ability. In you doing that, you are also developing yourself personally. Powerful lesson from the flower. The third thing that I would like to explore about the blooming of a flower is time and needs. Every flower does not bloom at the same rate or at the same time. Some need more light than others. And we can equate that to our developmental process. There are certain skills that we have that right off the bat, they are going to bloom like a morning glory. Up in the morning, early, stays up with the sun, and in the evening, it goes down. Then we have other types of flowers, such as orchids. It takes a while for us to see the true potential of an orchid, even after the bud is formed. But let me tell you a secret. When that orchid blooms, it is the rarest and most beautiful thing you will ever see. Some of them have unusual colors, such as the blue, not the everyday run-of-the-mill colors like the red and pink and the white that we are accustomed to. And when they bloom, they stay for a pretty long time. Lesson to us. Let us take our time to bloom. Needs. Before that flower can open up and bloom, it has to take in things from the soil. We all have support systems, mentors, which are provided for us, traveling out of your clubs. That hunger and that desire to be the best you. If we consider these things, if we pay attention to it, we are going to blossom and bloom into being the best Toastmaster that we can be. And as we develop, we are going to be the best person that we can be. So I admonish you again to remember or consider the ways of the ant. And when you think about the ant, if you don't like ant, consider the flower. Take time to develop. Practice, bloom. That is how you bloom, by practicing. And watch the company you keep. It is very important for your development. Mr. Facilitator, back to you.
Thank you so much. We'll now take a 1 minute of silence to write down our notes. We will now move on to our second speaker. Our second speaker is Vishal Aslet. Vishal, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me okay? See me
Yes.
okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. The three evaluators for Vishal are Frederica, Rambesh, and Bharat. Vishal Aslet. Buying my first car. Buying my first car, Vishal Aslet.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. The year was 1997. I'm about to graduate from Cleveland State University. I have a job lined up and I'm ready to make some money. Things are looking up for me in life. There's only one problem. The job is on the other side of the town and I didn't have a car. and there was no public transportation. So I needed a car. But before I could buy a car, I had another problem. I needed a driver's license. I didn't know how to drive. So I called around some driving schools and I signed up for exactly 3 lessons. 2 to learn how to drive and 1 to pass the test. After the 2 lessons, my driving instructor told me there is no way you are passing this test. Man, you need more lessons. I said, look, if you're gonna give me some free lessons, I can't afford anymore. So I'm taking the test. When I came out, I showed him my driver's license. See, I passed. The guy was shocked. But I was all set to buy a new car. I called a few dealerships around and found a dealership on the west side of the town, which had exactly the car I wanted. A brand new 1997 champagne color Honda Accord. I called up the dealership and I said, look, I'm trying to sound tough. Look, man, you want to sell me a car, you're going to come pick me up. I'm not taking a bus. They said, sure, sir, no problem. Just keep things ready. On the day, I'm sitting on my couch, tapping my foot, nervous and excited. You know how that happens sometimes? You're nervous and excited at the same time. Exactly at 11 o'clock, there's a knock on my door. I open the door, and there's a well-groomed Black gentleman in suit and tie, smiling. He extends his hand out and says, hi, my name is Carl. I'm from the dealership to pick you up. I said, yes, Carl, I was expecting you. Let's go. The whole ride, 40-minute ride to the dealership, I was very nervous. I'm sitting next to Carl, clutching my stuff like I'm being taken to a detention center rather than a car dealership. He was a nice guy, actually. He tried to make me feel comfortable. When we got to the dealership, he said, just show me your employment letter, driver's license, and the down payment check, and let's go see your car. It's in the back lot. So we jump into, one of those golf carts, and he drives me to the back of the lot. And ladies and gentlemen, you know that moment when you fall in love? It was like that. Right outside the car wash was my brand new champagne color 1997 Honda Accord, freshly washed, the water still beating from it, waiting for me. The guy said, go ahead, get inside. I opened the door and got inside, and that aroma of a brand new car, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, I was in love. We did the paperwork, and I began to pull out of the parking lot. As I came to the ramp, Mayfield Road, it occurred to me I had no place to go. I could go home, but my brother was at work and the rest of my family was back in India. There was no one waiting for me. Or I could take a left and go to work and show off my car there. So that's what I did. I took a left, drove to my workplace, a place called Advanced Manufacturing Center, or AMC, which was on the campus of Cleveland State University. My boss was a middle-aged man named Andy, a very warm and extremely intelligent guy, but a little rough on the edges. I went inside. I pulled into the parking lot. It was a busy day at AMC, lots of trucks and cars. I found a spot away from everybody else. It's a brand new car, and I parked there. Then I went inside to see Andy. Andy was working on something. He didn't even look up, but he knew I was there. He said, what's up, grasshopper? That's what he called me fondly back then. I said, Andy. He didn't look up. I said, Andy, I bought a car. You what? I bought a car. Hey, Mike. Hey, Chris. Hey, this, hey, that. I got a new car. Let's go take a look. All of a sudden, engineers. We all walked out together to see my car. Nobody looked at the car. No one got inside. They popped up the hood. And they all started looking at it. Oh, this new generator, this, that. This in 1997 Honda Accord. And as they all huddled around the engine, I kind of got squished back to the back, craning my neck to see what the heck are they talking about. After about 10 minutes of this, they closed the door and said, "Good job, Vishal, nice car." I said, "What about the inside, Andy?" He said, okay. But I was excited. I was happy. Somebody got to see my car and they appreciated it. They appreciated the hard work that took to get that car. I got into the car all excited, now ready to go home and show it to my brother. As I'm pulling out, I'm doing pretty well. I know there's a lot of trucks and cars here. I need to be careful. I'm backing out. And as I'm backing out, I'm thinking to myself, that driving instructor was so wrong about me. Not hitting anything. And then I hear this sound. My heart sank. I look in the front and my car's front bumper is caught under a semi. I back out my car, but there's a long scratch on it. Oh no, my brand new car. It hasn't even been 2 hours yet. I drove it back to the dealership. I went to see Carl, the salesman who had sold me the car, and I said, "Carl, guys, I scratched my car," hoping naively that he would give me a new one. Carl looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, man, but the body shop is across the street." Okay. I got into my car and took it to the body shop. They buffed it up. It looked pretty good after that. And I finally drove home, showed it to my brother. My brother was happy. We had been taking bus for a long time. Anyway, that is how I got my first car. I drove it for 10.5 years before it was finally totaled. But that's the story for another time. We all have bought cars, but our first car is always very special. I hope that you remember how you got your first car, whether it was new or used, and maybe reminisce about it, maybe do a speech about that. But it truly is a very special time of the life. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please take a minute to write down your evaluations. Thank you so much. Laurie, you want to turn on your camera? We will now proceed to our first evaluation. Our first evaluator is going to be Jamal. Jamal George, it's all you.
Thank you, Abhijit. Fellow Toastmasters, guests, and especially you, Laurie. Laurie, your speech about blossoming and blooming, it came at the right time because I'm at that stage right now where I am blossoming and blooming at Toastmasters because of the continuous practice and feedback that I get from my mentors and everyone that I meet at Toastmasters. Two things I like about your speech is your voice quality was amazing. I could hear each and every word that you were saying, and it was engaging. And I could understand everything that you were saying. So that's pretty good. The rate was smooth, and it was excellent in the way you said things. Now, two things I feel like you could improve upon is pause. So I would suggest if you could have a pause, then it would connect with me even more. For example, when you smell the rose, if you could smell and then pause, then, we will smell with you as well. When it came to tone, I kind of felt it was monotone. Maybe you could vary it. For example, let me tell you a secret. In that way, I know you're engaging me back again. So that would be really helpful. So the best thing about your speech was, you said, was the message that take time to blossom. And I really like that. To summarize, pause as much as possible, especially at moments that you want us to be there with you. That would be helpful if you could pause. And instead of monotone, if you could vary so we can feel the different emotions, that would be excellent. And what I liked the best was your voice quality, because it was engaging, and the rate at which you spoke was very smooth. And the best part about your speech was everybody blossoms at a different rate and take time to blossom. Thank you so much for this message. Back to you.
Thank you, Jamal. I really enjoyed how you shared how the speech affected you. And when giving the recommendations, I liked how specific you were. But when you're talking about two things Laurie did effectively, you are very general. So if you can be very specific in those, that will make your evaluation very effective. Thank you, Jamal. Thank you. Let me call upon our next evaluator, Jim Wan. Jim, it's all you, sir.
Laurie, I really liked your speech, because especially that you used a great metaphor, the metaphor of the flower and the Toastmaster system. Metaphors are a great way to tell stories and to get us to learn about things. I have to focus more on the vocal variety because that's your project today. I really liked your pauses. I thought your pauses were great. They were really long. They were just right. For example, you said, orchids, they take a while to bloom. That really gives me that impact. Thirdly, time, take your time. Firstly, very great potential. These are really great instances of pauses. You had the beginnings of alliteration, blossom, bloom, be. Think about it, look at your script and see if you can make that into a real alliteration, something to do with the Toastmasters. So we go from blossom, bloom, which is flower. What is a B word in the Toastmaster system? And that would really knock it out of the park. That would make it really, really great. I found some words I just couldn't hear. For example, right at the beginning, you said, consider the way of the ant. I heard ant. I'm not sure if I heard it wrong. But notice ant is a single syllable word. And when you're beginning a speech where we have no context at all, I think it's very useful to have not single syllable words, because if you have two syllables or more, it becomes very easy to pick up and understand and put the pieces together. Your voice also dropped off. There's a layer, a protective layer called the hood. I heard the hood. I'm not sure because actually I couldn't hear it because your voice dropped way off. There's a layer of protection called, I didn't catch that. So while you can be quiet loudly so that we can still hear it. You had a great speech, good progression through everything. Just watch the syllables, make sure every word is clear. Even when you're going into a low tone, make it loud, because I can be quiet very loudly. I like the pauses, you can build on that. And I like the vocal variety. Best of all was your use of a metaphor, which is a highly skilled technique, I believe. Thank you for your speech. Back to you, Abhijit.
Thank you so much, Jim. Jim, I really enjoyed how specific examples you had in your evaluation. That was really helpful, and for me as well as for Laurie. The one thing when you're sharing how the speech affected you, you started out with metaphors. You can insert yourself more by saying, I love metaphors. And then when you say that I really enjoyed the metaphors, it creates that strong bond. One thing I would caution you, be careful introducing something new in your summary. Like you said in your summary, your vocal variety was good, and you had never mentioned that in your evaluation until you were summarizing it. So be careful with that. Okay. Thank you so much for your precise evaluation. Let me call upon our third evaluator, Sarah Tang. Sarah, it's all you.
Hi, Laurie. Thank you for your speech. I enjoyed it because here in California, it feels like spring and I can see the flowers blooming. And I love that you even had a flower and you looked like your flower too. I felt like your makeup and your earrings, it all matched. So it was enjoyable to watch. Some things that I thought you did well in your speech. One is that you were very loud and expressive. You were standing, so you were projecting very well. And I couldn't possibly ignore you. Like your voice just came at me. And you're very expressive. I loved the way you said, oh my Lord, it smells so good. Another thing that I think you did effectively was your varied rate of speaking. You spoke quickly sometimes, and then you slowed down at really important parts. Like when you said, take our time to bloom. So that really emphasized the importance of that message. Something that I think you could improve in your speech is you added content at the end of your speech. At the very end, you said, watch the company you keep. And I wasn't really sure where that was coming from, because the whole time you were talking about, taking your time to bloom, being like a flower. So I wasn't really sure where that came in, and that was added at the end of your speech. The best thing about your speech is your metaphor and how you took it even further towards the end and made it more meaningful by talking about specific kinds of flowers and how different flowers need different care and they develop differently, which I felt like that applied to us as people. And it made the metaphor interesting to me because up until that point, yes, of course, we all bloom, but this took it to another level for me. In conclusion, I love your expressiveness and keep blooming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Sarah, I really enjoyed the specific examples you were giving in your evaluation. When you're sharing how the speech affected you, if you can put yourself in it rather than being general, that will make it more precise. Okay? Thank you so much, Sarah. Laurie, how was that for you? Can you give me in 1 minute how hearing the feedback from the evaluators, how was it for you?
Feedback from the evaluators was pretty encouraging for me.
Okay.
They use the sandwich method, so they started off with what was really good, and you realize for all the evaluators who would have spoken, something touched them differently from the speech. And that is what our speech is supposed to do for anybody when we are speaking. So I appreciated that. I appreciated the feedback. Some of the things, particularly when Sarah came on and she talked about introducing that content at the end of the speech, I was conscious of it, but I was looking to see if the evaluators would pick it up. So I really did appreciate that point coming out. As with everything, I took notes. I'm looking to see where I can improve, and I'm sure the persons who are listening in this workshop can improve as well. So thank you
Yes.
very much for that.
Perfect. Laurie, one thing I would add is I want you to have a mic very close to you because that will improve your sound quality tremendously.
I had to stand a bit back from it so that you
Yes.
can see the upper half of the body, so that affected the delivery as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now move on to our next evaluation of the second speaker. Let me call upon our first evaluator, that is Frederica. Frederica.
Thank you, Toastmaster of the day. Good morning, good evening again to everybody, especially Vishal. Thanks for a great speech. That was an exciting story since the purpose of your speech was to deliver a story. Buying your first car. I could relate to it. It was a relatable story, and we all get excited when we're buying our first car because we walk sometimes, we rush on the bus. So I was caught up. I got caught up from the day one. The year was 1997. Two things I loved about your speech is the impact it had on us. As I said, it was relatable and you delivered it with excitement. You went through every process that you had to get to that car. Finally, you got the car. So your story was well told. The structure was there. The best, no, before I say the best thing, where I thought you could have improved, no. Another thing, your vocal variety was very good. Since you were comfortable with your speech, you went. What I really liked was when Carl came in and you shook his hand, you spoke just like Carl. So I love that part about it. The excitement in, as you were getting excited, the way you delivered, you changed your voice, it really impacted your story. The best thing I like about your speech was the way you use your stage. It is a story, you use your stage. Every movement, back, in your gestures, you showed us clearly, I could see everything. So I like that. In summary, I would say I loved your vocal variety. I love the impactfulness of that story. The best thing I liked was the use of your stage. And I look forward to your next speech, Bishop.
Thank you so much, Frederica. Frederica, when you started your evaluation, I felt that you were taking like 4, 5, 6 sentences, and they were not very specific. So if you can be very specific to the point and share how it affected you, because sometimes we are talking, but we are not taking it inside. Like I want to hear from your heart, how did the speech impacted you? I really enjoyed this one example you talked about vocal variety, how he had the Carl's voice. It was very specific to the point. That was good. But your other points were not very, like the stage point was specific, but the other impactfulness. If you can give me that specific place where you felt that impact, that would be very helpful. And another thing is you left the 30 points on the table because you did not give any recommendations. So always give recommendations. There is always something for a speaker they can do to make their speech more effective. Okay. Thank you, Frederica.
Thank you, thank you.
Let me call upon our next evaluator, Ramesh. Ramesh, it's all you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Vishal. You made me remember my first car when I bought in 1996. I was in Santa Clara at that time, and came all the way to Gilroy to buy my first Toyota Camry. Thank you very much for having me reminisce. You did three things very effectively. First was structure. It had a great opening. You had elaborated all the right points in the body, and you had a conclusion. I loved that you opened with the scenario you were in. I could paint myself in that scenario, that you had no car, no license. And then you elaborated on how you went about the license, how you went about the car. And you coming to the work and showing the thing and concluding with emotional connection about our first cars. The second thing I liked is your facial expression, eye contact, and body language. I think they were exemplary because you really looked at the camera all the time. You had no notes. You really prepared well. We connected with you. You used the stage very well. I think you know the nuances very well as to coming close to the camera or going away from the camera. I loved it. Third thing I liked is your use of language and use of humor. You had very well chosen words, spoken very clearly, and you use humors as well, like grasshopper or body shop is across the street, or how the inspector, your driving inspector, thought that you would not pass. Now, there are two things that you can do to make the speech more effective. First thing first is avoid thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, right at the beginning. Jump on it right away. You don't have to thank, because people should be thanking you for the speech. Second is, some of your gestures were really not consistent. For example, you were talking about up, something that is go up, and you use this expression. This is a thumbs up. Thumbs up is not directly associated with up. It is more like a different meaning. So that is something you may want to look at. Also, you missed an opportunity to use a great expression when you said the guy was shocked. You use guy was shocked. That is where you could, oh, guy was shocked. And one minor thing is a few of the words were hard to hear. Maybe you drop, because of your voice variation, you drop some of the word to very low level. It was very hard to hear from your audio. To challenge yourself, you can make the conclusion a little bit more stronger. Tie it to the beginning scenario. That would make it even better. But overall, the speech was extremely entertaining. I connected right from the get-go. You showed us the way in the body language and the structure. There was consistent, if with more consistent gestures and stronger conclusion, you could take your speech delivery to greater heights. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. Ramesh, I really enjoyed your evaluation. You had specific points. You also shared how the speech affected you. But if you are competing, you will have to watch the time. You might not have time to go through all these points, okay? Because you have to summarize completely each and every point. So watch the timing. Let me call upon the next evaluator, Bharat, who is evaluating for the first time. Bharat.
Thank you, and thanks, Vishal, for being the first speech that I evaluate. First of all, I wanted to say I really enjoyed your speech today, and I could sense the preparation that has probably gone into the speech because it sounded very flawless, very smooth, and I could definitely relate to it as well because I felt that experience of going into a parking lot and purchasing a new van and that fresh car smell that you talked about. That was something that was completely relatable. And coincidentally, I've had a first car that I purchased that was also a clunker, so I could relate to it from that perspective too. And so two things I think you felt you did very effectively was you convey your gestures. I mean, you were talking about a driver's license. So like that sort of gesture really came across really well. That's just one example. But then also when you were talking about crowding around the car, you sort of got close to the camera, and so that really conveyed how you were. This was back at the at your workplace where people were crowding around the car and pushing you out. And I think your vocal variety was something that also carried across really well, just as how the other evaluators have talked about. Carl being a great example, and your boss at work. I think two things that I feel you could improve on were basically the thank you, Mr. Toastmasters. I think that was at the beginning. You could probably drop that. And you could also, there were a gesture that you had made at the beginning where I think you were talking about the third point, but then I think the number you had pointed out was number 2. So that was one thing that you could also tweak. And I think in terms of your structure of your story, I feel like maybe there's things you could sort of rejigger, where you bring in your brother whom you were living with, maybe giving you a ride to the driver's office, because I felt like that your brother was sort of being introduced in the middle of the story. So that's just one point. I think the best part for me was where you tied the ending back to the beginning, because the whole reason you had tried to get a driver's license and why your instructor felt you weren't ready, that sort of came across at the end, where you went out of the parking lot and you scratched the car. So I think the beginning and the ending tied together very well. And the ending left us wanting more to understand how your car got totaled. And like you said, that's probably a story for another day. So I really loved that ending. So I think in summary, it was a great speech, very great structure, gestures, and vocal variety. And there's just a few logistical things that I think maybe need to be tweaked, but the ending left us wanting more. So I'd just like to end there.
Thank you so much, Bharat. Bharat, how was it doing your first evaluation?
It was a little stressful in the beginning, but then once I got the structure together, I think it came together.
Oh, good job, Joe. Thank you for using the specific examples. Thank you, Bharat. Thank you. Vishal, how was it for you?
Fantastic. I'm tempted to thank my evaluators, but I'll skip that part. I think all 3 of the evaluators were very actively listening to my speech. I can tell they paid attention to everything I did, which is the goal of one of the goals of doing speech evaluations is to develop the listening skill, not just the speaking skill. So I think they did a fantastic job. The suggestions were very accurate. The 2 things that I will really take away are make sure the gestures are consistent, and this speech really needs a better conclusion. Even I feel it. I just didn't have time to prepare for one, but definitely if I do this again, I will take those 2 into account. And thank you for all the positive feedbacks and letting me know what I should keep in the speech. I think that's just as important.
Thank you so much, Vishal. Venu, any questions? How did you feel? Venu, was it helpful for you?
Yes, definitely. I really enjoyed the first talk from you. So I had a key takeaways as well in terms of how would I evaluate going further and what kind of key points that I would like to keep. And I really enjoyed presentations from Laurie and Vishal. So it's good the way I learned how the gestures could make a presentation better, and great content from Laurie as well. Wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Venu. Thank you. Anyone has any questions for anyone? Please let us know. Yes, Jim.
Do you evaluate differently for an experienced speaker versus someone very junior?
Yes, I'm going to answer that question, and I want to tell that actually I forgot. Okay, okay. My battery ran out in my camera. We always have to meet the speaker where they are at. Like suppose if I am evaluating Vishal, I'm going to be really hard at him. But if I'm evaluating Bharat, I would be very different. I'll meet him at that. Like suppose if I'm evaluating an icebreaker, I'll not give you 2 ways how to make the speech effectively. I'll only give 1 way how to make the speech effectively. So I'll meet the person where they are at. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, I'm going to return it to Madam President Frederica Durant. Frederica, it's all you. Oh, you're muted, Frederica.
Thank you, Abhijit. You realize I was dealing with a family problem, and that is why I really had my recommendations. I had everything in charge. They said Toastmasters don't apologize, but sorry, because I have them. I had all my notes well written, but my sister had an emergency, so I was dealing with that. Sorry about that. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Abhijit, for a great evaluation session. I made notes from start to beginning, and I had so much to tell Vishal, but I will maybe have to email him what I had because it had to tie with the beginning. And again, one thing I had to mention to him, and I realized it did not make it, and it's written there, Vishal, is that your gestures were you had adequate gestures, but when you came and you spoke about nervousness, you were smiling. Right,
Yeah.
so that wasn't my type of evaluation at all. You were smiling, so I picked that up, and I had very specifics for you, but sorry about that. So it was a good session, VTM Abhijit. Masterclass, I call that. That was one of my best. Yes, I could not execute it today, but I will continue to execute it. And I'm sure everybody on this platform did learn a lot and will do. I had some very good evaluations, so that was good. That was good. And right now we will give any guest on the platform a chance to say how they found our session today.
I'll start. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lucille.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. So I do want to say that this was definitely an informative session, and I must say a learning experience as well. During evaluations, I'm fairly new to Toastmasters. I'm 6 months in right now, and I'm usually always focused on attempting to regurgitate the entire speech when given an evaluation, which I realized that it's impossible. So I appreciated the breakdown provided today in terms of what to look for when providing evaluation, which allowed me to focus on one or two things and elaborate on that. So I am appreciative of this session, and I will use that in my Toastmasters journey. Thank you.
We have guest Bharat. Guest Bharat, are you there?
Hey, I am unable to speak. Wonderful session. Thanks for having me here.
You're always welcome. Come again, come again. We have Lucian Robinson. Lucian Robinson.
So it's very late here at midnight and everyone is sleeping here.
Understood,
I was
understood.
listening in. It was real value. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Guest Dylan.
I just want to say that I really enjoyed the session. I felt that the information was really great. I took away a lot of learning points, a lot of nuggets that I can apply in my future evaluations. And I would request that if I can come back and evaluate a speech in your club, just so that Abhijit can see the impact of this masterclass, as well as have the opportunity to also receive an evaluation from me.
Very good. Abhijit is one of the best when it comes to evaluation. You must learn. Venu, you want to say something? No?
Yeah, I already talked about it. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
And I was just saying I already talked about it before.
You talked about
so,
it, okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you want to say something?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was a really great workshop. I loved, even though I've been to, I think, one other workshop on evaluations that was done by Renee, who Abhijit mentioned. And it was similar content, but still, again, hearing it again was super helpful and informative. And I was engaged the whole time, Abhijit, and taking notes, even though you told us we don't need to. I think the best part was how interactive it was, because we actually got to see the evaluations in action with 2 speeches, and we got feedback from both Abhijit and from the speakers. So that was new, and I really, really enjoyed that part. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Sarah. And Abhijit, that's what I have to say. Although you said do not take notes, I took 6 pages of notes because it's real good information and I do not want to just leave it on the computer. A question I had to ask though, Abhijit. The year was 1997. To end that speech, could you say that year was 1997? Would that be effective?
Oh, so you are changing. So I always start with it was 1997 when I'm
Right.
starting a speech. Yeah.
That was it. But in the end, at the end of that speech, if he had said that year was 1997, would that be effective?
Or you don't have to say, but you can say that I will not forget that day when I bought my first car. So I'm kind of circling that, the first line to the
Okay.
last one. Yeah.
Okay, so you type in.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Jim, you have any feedback for us?
Yeah, great workshop. Where are the notes?
I will send, I just put it in here right now.
Okay, I love that. I love that, Jim. It's always nice when we have you.
Yes.
Toastmaster Laurie, it's your first time here. Give us some feedback.
Yes, it is. Thank you for having me. It was a bit nerve-wracking for me when I realized that I would be on this end in a workshop or for evaluation. But I took on the challenge because as Toastmasters, we should always challenge ourselves to be on both ends and to grow. The workshop, though I would have been exposed to the content before, it was still valuable for me. And some of the things I would have missed after hearing the content of this for the first time, I can now apply it. So it added great value to me today. And I want to say thank you for that.
Thanks, Laurie. And we did appreciate that you agreed to be a test speaker. Great job. I learned a lot from your speech, and I hope you can present it at my club. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. It was a great meeting. Our next meeting will be next Saturday, same time. This time is not a master class, right, Abhijit?
No, no.
Right. It will be just an ordinary meeting, and we always welcome when guests visit us, because if you notice, we learn and we grow. I have learned so much, and I know, Abhijit, I will be a better evaluator when I go out there. It was good being here, and thank you for coming. Meeting is over. But before we go, we have to do the roll, so we can, Abby, you can end your recording.